Thank you, Mr. President. From the outset, let I say with a great deal of humility how honoured I am and what intense pride I feel at standing here this evening. A few short weeks ago, I, along with my fellow newbies in the class of 2019, were entertained by a former long-standing member of this House, the Honourable Michael Egan. One of the many gems from Mr. Egan was, do not say something in 30 minutes that you could say in 15. Your fellow members will appreciate it. So I am taking his advice on this occasion, and this occasion only, and keeping this speech succinct. I'd like to take this opportunity in this, my inaugural speech in this House, to thank and acknowledge the assistance and opportunities I have been provided with, which enabled me to stand before you here today. Firstly, my wife and life partner Lynette, who has been a stable, steady rock for me and always willing to let me pursue my goals and ambitions. For that, I thank you. Our son Cameron, who is the joy of our lives and whose own achievements, particularly in the sporting arena, have made us very proud parents. To our party founder and federal leader, Senator Pauline Hanson, I thank you for providing me with the opportunity to have represented our party at the recent state election. You placed a great deal of faith in me, and I trust that I have not and will not let you down. To my colleague in the House, the Honourable Mark Latham. Mark, I owe you a debt of gratitude for the hard work, experience and heavy lifting you did during the campaign. It is those efforts of yours that raised our party to the position that we find ourselves in today. So to you, Mark, a public thank you and an acknowledgement of your vital contribution. To our New South Wales Party executives, in particular Mick Jackson, Amit Batish and Kate McCulloch, thank you for your behind-the-scenes efforts in coordinating and assisting our campaign. To our other candidates and volunteer workers who man polling booths, pre-poll booths, handing out flyers at train stations and other valuable contributions, I say thank you. And lastly, to our supporters and those that voted for us, I sincerely thank you and pledge to continue to advocate for our election policies which are based on common sense and practical approaches. I would also like to acknowledge some members of this chamber. The Honourable Justin Field, who I've shared a few cups of coffee with, and the Honourables Noel Blair, Lou Amato, Scott Farlow and Matthew Mason Cox for taking the time to sit with me and offer friendship and advice. And also the Honourable Greg Donnelly, thank you Greg, who has offered to provide me with his sage advice as well. To those gentlemen, I thank you. Mr. President, from the day I first stepped foot into this historic chamber, I was asked, in your inaugural speech, what is your inaugural speech going to be about? And to be honest, I was at a complete loss. I know traditionally it's an opportunity to convey to others an insight into my past life, what has fashioned me into the character that I am today. However, I believe my fellow members do not need nor want to sit here and listen to the trials and tribulations in the life of Rod Roberts. There is a loud call from outside this chamber, and in particular from outside this building, that politicians are too self-absorbed, too self-centred, rather speak about themselves and not interested in the community. Now, this is definitely not a criticism or a reflection of those that have spoken before me, but I've chosen to take a different course. So it was a chance meeting with two young, bright and intelligent students on the front stairs of this building on Thursday the 9th of May that chose for me what I would like my address to be about. These two young leaders of tomorrow, Ella and Stephen, are school captains of Endeavour Sports High School, situated at Caringbah here in Sydney. This school, by the way, was awarded the Australian Public School of the Year Award for 2018. Ella and Stephen were here as part of the school leadership program, along with a number of other students from various schools. And I'm sure all here today are well aware of that program. As this House was not sitting on that day, these young people were availed of the opportunity of watching the proceedings in what we refer to in this chamber as the other place, that being the Legislative Assembly. It was after this and during their lunch break, I had the chance meeting with them both. And I asked, how did you enjoy your time watching proceedings? Unfortunately, Mr. President, I was left dismayed, disappointed, and to be quite frank, embarrassed with their answer. They said, quote, "We have been taught from kindergarten to show respect to one another, to listen to when others are speaking. We did not see that here today. They could not believe the antics, the disrespect and the uncivil behaviour that they witnessed. They further said they would not be allowed to behave like that at school. Mr. President, these young future leaders of tomorrow have left this building disillusioned as to the state of politics and in particular the behaviour of politicians in New South Wales. The election to public office is a privilege and carries with it a great weight of responsibility. The citizens of New South Wales expect, demand and of course deserve representation of the highest calibre. I believe that we need to be reminded of the definition of a politician, and that definition is one: a person whom is responsible for making citizens' voices, opinions and perspectives present in the public policy making process. Members of this Parliament have been entrusted with the grave responsibility of providing effective and enlightened leadership of this state, and this trust has come from the community at large. I recently received communication from the Most Reverend Anthony Fisher, Catholic Archbishop of Sydney, congratulating me on my election to Parliament. In it, he provides a quote from the Bible. That quote is from Luke chapter 12, verse 48, which says inter alia, "And from one who has been entrusted with much, much, much more will be asked." Now, I don't come from Nirvana, Mr. President, nor do I believe in utopia. And I do not believe that members of this chamber should sit in a circle on the floor and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. This is a venue for the contest of ideas and ideals. And therefore I do, as do we all, expect this House to engage in rigorous and robust debate. Mr. President, in life, the varying of opinion is normal. In this chamber, it is expected. This variance in turn can lead to frustration and disagreement. However, this is all part of the democratic process. The Westminster system of government has led to an adversarial approach, one where sides advocate their party's policies and stance and attempt to persuade others to agree to their position. This is the nature of our role. This adversarial system, though, is not an excuse for ill-tempered and improper behaviour. It is not an excuse for conduct unbecoming of such a position of responsibility. The people of New South Wales demand and expect the appropriate level of behaviour from their elected representatives. Through the two recent election campaigns, it has become obvious and clear that there is amongst members of the public a great deal of mistrust of politicians. This mistrust leads to a lack of confidence and faith in the political system and in those that they have elected to represent them. This perception is fuelled by the display witnessed by the likes of Ella, Stephen and their fellow students. Mr. President, I believe it is incumbent upon us all, in this, the 57th Parliament, to change that view and perception. Whilst we will and should at all times passionately state and defend our positions in debates, there remains no excuse or tolerance of the degrading of others and not displaying of common courtesy. We are expected at all times, whilst vigorously outlining our opinions, to act with decorum. Now, whilst on the subject of decorum, Mr. President, and courteous behaviour, I would like to acknowledge and thank the Department of Parliament staff, from the Clerk's Office, the Library, Members' Entitlement, in fact all that I've had dealings with, have been so professional and helped guide me through the maze that is this Parliament and its operation. Mr. President, that leads me to another question I have been asked, and that is, what do you want to achieve whilst you're in Parliament? What will be your legacy? Now, I'm not naive enough nor egotistical enough, Mr. President, to believe that I alone can change anything. What I do know, however, is that all of us here working together as a cohesive unit can achieve many great outcomes for the people of New South Wales. One area I'd like to focus attention on and call upon all other members in this House to support is the area of water security. I believe that no one in this House could be satisfied with the current state of our river systems and therefore water supply. Water is intrinsic to life It is necessary to human life in so many ways. Now, there are some clever and talented members inside this chamber. However, I know even with our combined efforts, we cannot change climatic events, such as the drought we are experiencing at present, and I think was touched upon by the Honourable Noel Blair earlier today. But we are capable of putting in place mechanisms to harvest and capture more rainwater, and once captured, store and manage the allocation of that commodity in a way that realises how precious it is. In the early 1900s, way before the time climate change was thought up, Dorothea McKellar, in her iconic poem My Country, wrote of droughts and flooding rains. Our country, and thereby New South Wales, is a land of extreme climatic variability and a land that can be harsh at times. It has always been this way and will always be this way. Notwithstanding the unpredictability of weather patterns, surely there is commonality within this chamber to find better outcomes for our constituents. Water security, or the lack thereof, is imperative in helping secure our long-term economic prosperity. The security, availability, and of course, most importantly, affordability of water is absolutely necessary for agricultural production. It boosts regional population, employment, wealth, and of vital importance to us all, food security, whether it be animal or plant-based. We cannot keep taking more water from rural New South Wales without a subsequent impact on food production and their surrounding communities. The viability of many towns are under current threat. So too are jobs in regional processing and service industries. If we wish to maintain and hopefully grow our irrigated agricultural sector, we must increase storage capacity. There is no question that this current drought that we are enduring has shown that we have inadequate water storage. Irrigated agriculture has stopped in its tracks. If Australia's become the food bowl of Asia, and New South Wales wants to take advantage of this opportunity, we must have more water storage. There are many end users competing for their share of the limited resource that is water: agriculture, urban, industrial, and of course necessary environmental flows. It is my understanding that the last dam built in New South Wales was Split Rock Dam near Tamworth. It was in 1987, over 30 years ago. And in those 30 years since, the population of New South Wales has increased by 45%. Now is the time for a holistic and integrated approach to the capture, diversion and storage of water. It is the time to examine the augmentation of our existing infrastructure. It is the time to ensure the best management and allocation processes are in place. It is the time to guarantee that the systems in place are sustainable and efficient, and it is also the time to ensure that all practices in place are environmentally sound. As leaders, we are encumbered with the task of delivering solutions in this area for the people of New South Wales. Mr. President, as I cast my eyes around this chamber, I see various political parties representing a diverse range of people with varying views and beliefs. But if I may, I wish to highlight a degree of commonality in this area. I look to the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party. Now, they get it. They are heavily invested in finding a solution. In the last election, they won two seats straight off the back of the water issue, being Barwon and Murray. If they want to retain those seats and perhaps win more, they need to work to find a solution. My friends here of the Liberal and National Coalition, you lost those two seats to the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers. I'm sure you want to win them back and also shore up support in other regional and rural locations. To do that, you'll have to work to find a solution. To the members of the Labor Party, the political arm of the trade union movement, you purport to represent working families. Well, let me tell you, Jobs in regional and rural New South Wales are drying up as quick as the rivers are. Not just jobs directly in the agricultural side, but also jobs in service and support industries such as transport, processing and manufacturing. Then there's a flow-on effect into retailing in these small towns. But apart from the rural folk, what about the working families in the city areas? With a decrease in the productivity in the farming sector will come the inevitable rising of prices for produce. How will families be able to afford fresh fruit and vegetables to put on the dinner table? The Honourable Peter Primrose summed it up perfectly in his member's statement in this chamber last week. He said, and I quote Mr Primrose, "When farming is bad, everything is bad." The Honourable Mick Veitch, a former shearer from rural New South Wales, would have an affinity with rural people and surely an understanding of the impact that this current situation is having. And need I remind you on this side of the chamber that your slogan for your branding of country Labor is standing up for the country. To the independent in the House, Mr Justin Field, and to the members of the Greens, somewhere, there, who champion the cause of the environment, you will have noticed how I've talked about the importance of environmental flows and sustainable practices. So you too have a vested interest in solving this dilemma and crisis that we are in. To the Honourable Emma Hurst and the Honourable Mark Pearson of the Animal Justice Party, whilst you still have a lot of convincing to do, Emma, to get me to forego my steak, or with the arrival of winter lamb shanks, I understand your passion and desire to encourage us to eat a plant-based diet. However, no rain equals no grain. If your goals are to be achieved, you will need to ensure the reliability of the irrigation sector. Therefore, you need to get behind this. To the Honourable Fed Nile, sir, with all due respect, you have been in this chamber a very long time. You have probably heard this discussion over water ad nauseum. You've seen this can kicked down the road many a time. Well, now is the time to fix it. And I implore you to be involved. Your assistance is required. And that only leaves us, one nation, Mark and I. Well, clearly we are concerned. Concerned enough for me to be speaking about it here this evening. We get it. The Honourable Mark Latham and I toured the southern parts of this state prior to the election. Mark around Leeton and Moama, myself around Griffith and Deniliquin. We saw firsthand the effects. We listened to the farmers desperate impassioned pleas. We made it an election policy of ours, and we want to work towards that promise. So, Mr President, as can be seen here, we all have an interest, desire and motive to see positive changes and strategies implemented. Mr President, the time has come for innovative leadership and visionary government policy for a far greater harnessing, storage and allocation of our precious water resources. This vision may require the building of massive infrastructure. Now, some will say, what will this cost? I say, what is the cost if we do nothing? The same vision and leadership that was shown when the Sydney Underground Rail Network was built in the 20s, the Harbour Bridge was built, the tunnel under Sydney Harbour, that sort of vision is needed today. That's not to mention the might of the Snowy Hydro scheme as well. Yeah. Now, I'm sure all these projects would have had many detractors. Those that scoffed and said it couldn't be done or it's too expensive. Well, I don't think that that's a valid argument at all. Mr President, finding a workable, sustainable and timely solution to this crisis we find ourselves in will enable and support New South Wales' continued economic growth and prosperity. And remembering what is good for the people of New South Wales surely is good for us. Thank you.